There's no place in this world where I'll belong when I'm gone. And I won't know the right from the wrong when I'm gone. You won't find me singing on this song when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. And I won't breathe the bracing air when I'm gone. Can't even worry about my cares when I'm gone. Won't be asked to do my share when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. I won't be running from the rain when I'm gone. Can't even suffer from the pain when I'm gone. Can't say who's to praise and who's to blame when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. Won't see the golden of the sun when I'm gone. The evenings and the mornings will be one when I'm gone. Can't be singing louder than the guns when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. All my days won't be dances of delight when I'm gone. And the sands will be shifting out of sight when I'm gone. Can't add my voice into the fight when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. I won't be laughing at the lies when I'm gone. Can't question who or when or why when I'm gone. Can't live proud enough to die when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. There's no place in this world where I'll belong when I'm gone. And I won't know the right from the wrong when I'm gone. You won't find me singing on this song when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it. I guess I'll have to do it. I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here.
Dearly beloved, family and friends, we are gathered here today to celebrate the life of Hannah Tabitha Rappolt, known to most as Tabby, and to a special few as Mom and as Grandma. Though we are all devastated by her all too early death from abdominal infection at age 72, with her final birthday spent hospitalized and intubated, we strive this morning to remember her life with joy and gratitude amidst our grief. I am Reverend Katie Scudera, and I'm the lead minister here at First Parish in Needham Unitarian Universalist, where the Rappolt family has had a spiritual home for over 30 years. And with me on the chancel this morning is our ministerial intern, Dara Bryans. I deeply appreciate all of you who have traveled or dialed in from near or far to support Tabby's family, her husband George, their children Ethan, Tara, and Amanda, their son-in-laws and 5 grandchildren, and her 3 siblings and their families. Tabby's family invites all of you who are here in Needham to join them after the postlude for a memorial reception in our parish hall. We hope that this memorial celebration will honor Tabby's spirit and her life as a loving wife, mother, grandmother, sister, aunt, scouting mom, bonus mom, as a hard worker and dedicated Unitarian Universalist, including in ordained ministry and professional religious education, as an advocate for LGBTQ rights, immigration reform, and welcoming the stranger, and as a lover of theater, travel, music, square dancing, mythology, and creative anachronism. Thank you all for being here. And again, welcome, one and all. I invite forward two of Tabby's grandchildren, Evie and Shayla, accompanied by Tabby's son-in-law, Chad, to light our chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. And I invite forward Tabby's daughter, Tara, accompanied by her grandson, Elwin, to offer a reading selected by Tabby from 12th century Persian polymath Omar Khayyam.
The moving finger writes, and having writ, moves on, nor all thy piety, nor wit shall lure it back into cancel half a line, nor all thy tears wash out a word of it.
I invite you now to please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing one of Tabby's selected hymns, We Are. The lyrics are in your orders of service and can be found at number 1051 in the Teal hymnals. Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation, breathing deeply in and out as we hear these words from UU minister, Reverend Robert Weston. Spirit of life and love, we know who we know by many names and through many ways. Autumn, we know, is life en route to death. The asters are but harbingers of frost, the trees flaunting their colors at the sky. In other times, we'll follow where the leaves have fallen, and so shall we. Yet other lives will come, so may we know, accept, and embrace the mystery of life we hold a while, nor mourn that it outgrows each separate self, but still rejoice that we may have our day. Lift high our colors to the sky, and give in our time fresh glory to the earth. Amen.
I invite forward Tabby's granddaughter, Rhiannon, and her daughter, Amanda, to offer our readings. Awaken by 18th century English-American poet Lawrence Tribble, and a poem for Tabby, written by her brother, Seth.
One man awakens another. The second awakens his next door brother. The three awake can rouse a town by turning the whole place upside down. The many awake can cause such a fuss, it finally awakens the rest of us. One man up with dawn in his eyes, surely then multiplies.
Rushing tears, life starts with feelings and it ends with feelings. In between, a lot feel like thoughts, but they're not. I wish our father knew to tell us that before he died. Of course you did. I love you, big sister. Goodbye, Tabby.
The moving finger, having writ, has moved on. Neither our piety nor wit nor tears can wash out a word of it. And so today we strive to remember each line of the incredible life Tabby created for herself, for her family, and for her communities. Hannah Tabitha Tuckerman was born on April 15th, 1951, to Murray Moses and Bird Josephine Tuckerman, the first of their children. She was always called Tabby, which was fortuitous because Tabby hated the name Hannah. Bird and Murray had met at Yale. When they eloped, Bird was a 24-year-old master's student and Murray a 19-year-old undergraduate. Murray's father greatly disapproved of his son getting married so young, and there was some estrangement on that side of the family for many years. The Tuckermans were quite poor for the first few years of their marriage, perpetual students. Tabby was delivered gratis by a doctor friend of her maternal grandfather's. Her father, then only 23, was furthering his studies, earning a master's from Temple University and then a PhD from Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute. Tabby's next two siblings, Susanna called Suki and Seth, were both born in Troy while their father finished at RPI, and her youngest sister, Abigail, came along soon after. The Tuckermans settled outside Philadelphia in Windmore, with Murray securing a position as a research pharmacologist at the chemistry department at Temple. Home life at the Tuckermans could be quite challenging. While Murray loved small children, as far as Tabby could tell, Bird did not enjoy motherhood and distanced herself from the role as much as she could. She insisted her children call her Bird and Murray, Murray, and physically harmed them if they were disobedient. Bird was brilliant and charismatic and became a well-loved middle school teacher of the arts after Abigail went off to school, but at home she could be unpredictable, harsh. Tabby, as the eldest, often felt she needed to protect her younger siblings from their mother. At 73, just 3 years before her death, Bird would be finally diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Bird loomed large in Tabby's childhood memories and her choices of how not to behave in her adulthood. And yet her strong devotion to family meant that Tabby took her own family to visit her parents monthly until they had both died, Bird in 2001 and Murray in 2011. Well, growing up in Windmore, Tabby enjoyed playing and sometimes also fighting with her siblings, visiting with extended family members and cousins, participating in Girl Scouts, excelling in the humanities, and practicing pagan witchcraft. One day, when Tabby was in second grade, she came home crying because her classmates asked her where she went to church and she had nothing to tell them. Her father tried to console her by saying, "God is an unnecessary hypothesis." But that was not sufficiently comforting. Bird's parents, who Tabby loved, encouraged Bird and Murray to take Tabby somewhere for the sake of her social life. As they'd both grown up Jewish, the Tuckermans first took their children to the local synagogue, but Murray didn't think it was a good fit. So they tried the Unitarian Society of Germantown, and that's where they stayed. Tabby loved the church, and Murray got so involved so quickly that he participated on the national committee working on the merger between the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America in 1961. And despite her father's conclusions about God, Tabby would develop a strong personal prayer life and intimacy with God within her Unitarian Universalist faith. The National UU Liberal Religious Youth Program offered her the opportunity to meet the love of her life, George Rappolt, when they were just 15. The Unitarian Society of Germantown was holding a workday and fundraiser party. George's congregation from across town was invited to participate, and one of Tabby's friends wanted to play matchmaker. She was girlfriend to one of George's friends, and she told Tabby, "There's a guy you really need to meet. He's really weird, just like you." The boyfriend said the same to George. Tabby doubted the report, it seems almost took it as a challenge, and tried to bring out the weirdest things about herself, like how she didn't like cars or sports and how she was thinking of becoming a minister. And George was unfazed, but not convinced it was a match. So the friends tried again, inviting Tabby to George's 16th birthday party. Weird as she was, she brought him a copy of Omar Khayyam's Rubaiyat as a gift. George was still unfazed, and they tried talking again. The moving finger wrote, and Tabby and George were a couple from then on. That included the years that George attended Caltech in Los Angeles studying biology, while Tabby finished high school and then started at Wellesley College, following in a long tradition in her family and George's of elite women's colleges. Tabby and George dated by letter those 4 years, and Tabby, though not a great singer by her own estimation, but a lover of singing. She would sing to him when they would part ways, and a favorite was "Leavin' on a Jet Plane." While at Wellesley, Tabby participated in the Shakespearean Society, often in costumes and makeup. And after graduation, Tabby was an active alumna with the Shakes alum, the online Wags and Whiskers Wellesley group, and at the time of her death, was on the planning committee for her class's 50th reunion. Tabby was also one of the 7 founding members of the local Greater Boston chapter of the Society for Creative Anachronism, an international reenactment organization that researches and recreates medieval European festivals and events with creative, conscious, and idealistic improvements. Tabby's chapter, the Barony of Carolingia, was founded in 1971. I'm doing my best, I'm trying. In 1972, Tabby and George both attended the first of the SCA's largest event, the Penzic War, held annually in Pennsylvania. Due to COVID disruptions, the 50th anniversaries of both the Barony and the Penzic War are scheduled for 2023, and the Rapolts had planned to attend, and George still will for both of them. In Tabby's last year at Wellesley, George moved to Massachusetts and worked in a puzzle factory as the pair planned their wedding. With a service written by Tabby, they were married in September 1973, dressed in medieval garb and exchanging custom wedding rings. The heart buttons on Tabby's gown were a gift from George and would be passed on to both of their daughters for their wedding dresses. Tabby was blessed to grow warm, close relationships with George's family members, especially his mother. Tabby also began that fall her ministerial training at Andover Newton Theological School and graduated with her Master of Divinity at Andover Newton in 1977. She was ordained as a Unitarian Universalist minister in 1979. George, during this time, was working on his PhD in psychology at Clark University. And they were also beginning to grow their family. They experienced the heartbreaking loss of a late-term pregnancy, naming their stillborn son Tristan, which means born into sorrow. It was with great joy that they welcomed Ethan in 1978, followed by Tara in 81 and Amanda in 83. Each of their children were given names that, like Tristan, bore special meaning and have double middle names. Tabby and George would each choose a name, and their children's godfather, Merrill, Tabby's dearest friend from Andover Newton, would choose the third. Tabby's parents again insisted on being called by their real names, enjoying a compromise as Mo and Joe, truncated versions of their middle names. The Rappoldts' early years as a family of 3, then 4, then 5 were professionally challenging. After just 1 year as a professor at Holy Cross, George lost his position in part of a large layoff, learning his contract wouldn't renew mere days before their daughter Amanda was born. Tabby was very unhappy to hear about this while she was delivering. George then shifted into a new career in the burgeoning software engineering field. And it was not easy being a woman minister in the 1980s. Though there had been women ordained to the Unitarian ministry in the 1800s, that happened mostly in the Midwest and was not widely accepted by New England Unitarians. Reverend Tabby Rappolt shared with me, and then in a reflection with this congregation, that one congregational search team told her that if hired, they expected she would not become pregnant while serving as their minister, and that they would stipulate in her contract the type of birth control she would use to ensure that that wouldn't I know, you think like that's bad enough, and then it's a whole other level. And yet she persisted. Tabby served as minister of the First Church of Athol, Massachusetts, and then as minister of the Federated Church in Dighton, and then finally as minister of religious education here at First Parish in Needham. After just over a decade in ministry, Tabby decided it was time to move into something different, though she and her family stayed geographically rooted in Needham and spiritually rooted at First Parish. No surprise, Tabby volunteered in religious exploration and on the worship committee. Tabby ended up being hired as employee number 5 at Snowbound Software as an office manager, and she stayed with them for 19 years as they grew into a 50-person company, doing everything from HR to tech support to setting up databases and more. And at the same time, Tabby and George were raising their 3 beloved children. Tabby had high expectations and low self-estimation of herself as a mother. She was always worried she wasn't doing well enough, but her children strongly disagree with her assessment. Tabby parented out of a deep love for her children and a deep hope that they would each grow to be moral and productive members of society. She introduced her children to community organizations that were meaningful to her development: Unitarian Universalism, Scouting, and the Society for Creative Anachronism, in which Amanda and her family are still participants. She served on their parent-teacher associations, and through all these activities, she also became a beloved bonus mom to many of her children's friends. Tabby also introduced her kids to fantasy, sci-fi, and mythology, to the basics of witchcraft, and that there is an herbal blend to solve many problems, and her sense of justice and decorum. On the one hand, Tabby read her children the Miss Manners column in the Boston Globe every week and taught them how to set up and then use a formal dinner setting. Quite traditional. And on the other hand, Tabby always wanted to do the right thing by her fellow human beings, staying up to date on crucial human rights issues like LGBTQ equality and immigration reform. What Tabby's children learned from her was to serve others with kindness and fairness, and that a strong ethic of equality and compassion could be practiced through politeness and civility. No surprise again that Tabby was a regular volunteer at First Parish's Sunday social hours and at memorial receptions. Somehow, amidst parenting and full-time work, Tabby and George continued their love story as a couple. They loved cooking together, reading together, dancing together, just being together. They were core members of the local Great Plains Squares, and they loved to travel. They organized many family of 5 trips to see extended family and summer weeks at the UU Camp Star Island, with one notable family adventure to Brazil. And they also traveled just the 2 of them, to Hawaii, Alaska, Paris, down the Danube. After George retired in 2013 and Tabby in 2016, their travel only increased. Canada, Ireland, Iceland, the Galapagos, New Orleans. Their last trip together was last year by train from Toronto to Quebec City. In retirement, Tabby had 2 other major commitments with immigration justice and as Grandma Tabby. She volunteered with the Metro West Worker Center and First Parish's immigrant ministry/sanctuary team. And she and George also hosted in their home a Haitian same-sex couple through a UU-affiliated refugee organization. Her Emily Post training and UU ethics required her to welcome the stranger. Tabby also celebrated her 2 daughters' marriages, Tara to Jeff Rivard and Amanda to Chad Bergeron, and then celebrated the birth of each of her 5 grandchildren, Rhiannon, Shayla, and Elwyn Rivard, and Jasper and Evie Bergeron. Tabby loved her grandchildren, and the feeling was mutual. What a pleasure and joy that the Rivards and the Bergerons remained in New England so Grandma Tabby could be with her grandkids frequently. Tabby experienced good health and a clear mind for almost the entirety of her life. And that changed in November of last year. Tabby was hospitalized over Thanksgiving with an intestinal obstruction, and this led to the discovery of a spinal tumor, which doctors noted would paralyze her if it were not removed. Tabby went through that surgery to remove the tumor in March of this year, and her recovery seemed to be going as expected, though not without pain and discomfort, until just before Easter, when she was hospitalized again with a ruptured bowel. Tabby experienced sepsis and required surgery, antibiotics, and intubation in the ICU to stay alive. She spent her 72nd birthday in this state with her family anxiously waiting to see if she would wake up. And wake up she did. Her doctors said with sufficient physical therapy she might even fully recover. But Tabby didn't think so. In a particularly distressing 2 weeks for her family, Tabby communicated through writing and lip reading again and again that she believed it was her time to die. She had, as she had many times before, prayed to God about what was meant to happen to her next, and the answer she received was that her time was up. Tabby dismissed any suggestion from me that she may have misunderstood the message she received in prayer, or that perhaps she was depressed, even traumatized by her time in the ICU, and that her family and her church community needed her to hang on. Her refusal to envision her recovery was extremely difficult to hear. And then 2 weeks after she woke up, Tabby contracted another abdominal infection, and the doctors changed their prognosis, that it was unlikely she would survive another round of surgery, and if she did, her quality of life would be greatly diminished. Tabby nor her family wanted that. And so on Comfort Care, quite briefly, Tabby was able to say goodbye to her local siblings, to her children, and to her husband. I had the opportunity to apologize to her in person, acknowledging that she was right and we were wrong about whether her body could recover, and to tell her that First Parish would do our best to take care of her family. George told me that Tabby didn't have a strong belief in survival after death. When they were first courting as teenagers, she told him she had a vision of herself as a rock, and that after death she would crumble. Tabby had a comfortable and loving last day. She was at peace with the end of her life, but as her husband said to me, her family and her communities were not ready to let her go. Tabby Rappolt died early in the morning on Sunday, May 7th, with her husband by her side. Tabby left behind family, friends, former co-workers, and community organizations, all of whom miss her fiercely. Perhaps like me, when you hear of all Tabby Rappolt did for her family and all the communities of which she was a part, you remember the words of the poet Marge Piercy. I love people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. Thank you, Tabby, for not waiting on the sidelines of life as a parlor general or a field deserter, but instead joining in the harvest, putting out the fires, and leaving your communities better than you found them. Amen.
What a dream I had, pressed in organdy, clothed in crinoline of smoky burgundy, softer than the rain. I wandered empty streets down, past the shop displays. I heard cathedral bells tripping down the alleyways. As I walked on, and when you ran to me, your cheeks flushed with the night. We walked on frosted fields of juniper and lamplight. I held your and when I awoke and felt you warm and near, I kissed your honey hair with my grateful tears. Oh, I love you, girl. Oh,
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails the new creation. Above the tumult and the strife, I hear its music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest loudly roars? I hear the truth, it liveth. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since love is Lord of heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing when tyrants tremble sick with fear and hear their death knell ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near? How can I keep from singing? In prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging.
my shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing? My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails the new creation. Above the tumult and the strife, I hear its music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing?
How can you sum up the life of someone you have shared almost every day with for over 50 years? Someone you have slept beside almost every night, shared almost every meal, and faced all of life's problems together. Simply being with her brought me happiness. I could tell you how mischievous Tabby was, though rarely in public. I could tell you some of the many things that she enjoyed: children, food, travel, music, family, pets, flowers and plants, reading, especially fantasy and science fiction, her favorite TV shows and video games. I could also tell you about her courage and cheerfulness during our early years of poverty, or about how she remained uncorrupted by decades of severe emotional abuse by her mother. Instead, I will tell you that Tabby was always the dominant partner. It took me decades to realize this, and I'm not sure if she ever did. Tabby's mother laughed at her for being disorganized, and in reaction, Tabby became almost superhumanly organized. These organizational skills served her well in the ministry and made her a significant factor in the success of the company where she spent the last decades of her working life. Her organizational skills also meant that she easily coordinated the schedules of 5 busy people in our household. She organized all of the household gatherings and kept track of where everything was. She did essentially all the mind work to run the family, but never for herself, always to be sure that everyone got what they needed. Tabby kept me looking for work during the hard years in the early 1980s. We both decided together to move to Needham, but Tabby did the research that informed that decision. We joined Great Plains Squares on her initiative. She pushed to make our move to Natick happen when it did. I am very glad for all these things. She was always the more important parent and the more important grandparent. She connected with people emotionally in ways that I never did. Tabby always had a clear understanding of the big picture, but whenever she could, she chose to act in ways that concretely benefited the people around her. Her participation in both organizations and social causes usually took the form of direct, practical help that solved immediate problems. Tabby had the most beautiful soul I have ever known. She was, and still is, my one true love. She was the light of the world, and now she is gone forever.
Thank you, George. I invite Tabby's sister Suki forward to offer her reflection.
I had too many memories to bring them forth today. Tabby is still creating memories for me. My family had recently purchased a new home Tabby had seen pictures of and was looking forward to coming and actually visiting the home this summer, the Tuesday following her passing. And I don't know, do people here know the significance of cardinals after someone has passed? That very first Tuesday, a cardinal appeared on the back part of our property. And I said, okay, Tabby, you're here. The following Tuesday, the cardinal came a little bit closer in the yard. And I said, okay, it's Tuesday again, no tacos. And every Tuesday since we started moving into the house, which was the beginning of May, actually the weekend before her passing, the cardinal has appeared. And this morning, when I opened the blinds to the deck, there sat the cardinal, as red can be. Now, to add on top of this, we know that her name was Tabby. One morning, we pulled up in front of the house, and out of nowhere, skittered a tabby cat. Jumped up on the front steps, jumped down, and disappeared. So, Tabby, thank you for reminding me that you're still here. And George, please look for the cardinals, okay? And the tabby cats.
Thank you, Suki. I invite forward Tabby's friend and godfather to her children, Merrill, to offer his reflection.
Tabby was the first friend I made when I entered Andover Newton Theological School in the winter of 1976. Her friendship made a great difference for me. Andover Newton was then intellectually, spiritually, socially an exciting place to be, but they didn't think to provide orientation for students like me who entered in the middle of the school year, left us hanging. I think of the ones who entered when I did, I was the only one who made it all the way through to graduation. And Tabby and the commuters' lounge at Andover Newton were the two major reasons why. I was not a commuter. I shouldn't have belonged there. But all of you know, Tabby had a great gift for being genuinely interested in and welcoming to others. And she helped make that lounge a second home for me and helped make the people there friends for me. So Unitarian Universalist Tabby and son and great-grandson of Congregationalist and United Church of Christ ministers, Merrill, found that we could talk theology and spirituality and politics and folk music. I still have the Gordon Bach record that I bought under her advice. We loved our traditions and shared that love, and we also found ways to find the humor in them. Some of you may remember Christopher Rapold's Hymns for the Celebration of Strife, the pastiche of Hymns for the Celebration of Life. She showed that to me, and I gave her the unofficial New England United Church of Christ creed. I believe in the fatherhood of God, the sonship of Jesus, and the autonomy of the local congregation, which should be read in ascending order of importance. We shared a love of Lord Peter Wimsey. And of course, for someone who did not yet know how to cook, there was the great advantage of having Tabby and George as friends. I still remember the birthday cake they made for me the following November. It was, if it was written, this would be in capitals. It was chocolate. And I can't remember if it was a 5-course or a 7-course dinner she once prepared for us. It was magnificent, and now that I do cook for myself and my family, I am in total awe of what she accomplished. Tabby and George befriended me, challenged me to think clearly, fed me, cared for me when I needed it. When I worked myself into total exhaustion trying to carry a full course load and work a full-time night shift job, they took me into their home. They fed me, they gave me a place to rest, get back on my feet again. For almost 50 years, Tabby was a friend. Even in times when we didn't see each other that often, she was still there in the letters that she wrote, the talks at the Lowell Folk Festival, with that smile that I'll never forget, that always seemed to express a great sense, even with all the sorrows, of wonder and joy and that gentle voice. She's left a lot of good memories for me. I will miss her, and I am so glad that I stumbled into that commuter's lounge at Andover Newton in 1976.
Thank you, Meryl. I invite forward Tabby's niece, Danielle, to offer her reflection. And I'd also like to make an addendum and an apology to Tabby's grandson, Dylan, who she got to meet when he was already a teenager. As a bonus mom to many young people in our town, she also got to be a bonus grandmother for Dylan. And I apologize for not adding that in with all of the grandchildren who were born and she got to meet when they were just little babies. Thank you for being part of the family, Dylan.
When I think of Tabby, I think of how kind she was. And I remember her smile and how there was just this hint of mischievousness in it always. And whenever I think of Tabby, I always think of George, because that's who they were, George and Tabby, always together in my memories. Sorry. So I've spent my whole life knowing that George and Tabby have been together forever. And I always heard that they met at a Unitarian youth conference when they were 13. And I remember thinking about that when I was 13 and I was at my first Unitarian youth conference, Green Eggs and Con. George and Tabby met through a friend of Tabby's who said to her, "You have to meet this guy, he's just as weird as you are." And they've been weird together ever since, for over 50 years. They've spent a lifetime together. How lucky you are to have found each other so young. It's amazing and rare just to find your mate and to get to spend your lives growing up together and growing your children up together, growing your grandchildren up together, going through all of it, the ups and the downs that make a life beautiful and rich and diverse. What a beautiful gift of a life Tabby got to experience and that we got to experience with her. I wish with all my heart that she was still here and still experiencing it with all of us. I really appreciate getting to connect with George and Tabby over the last decade. They've visited my home in California twice, and I'm incredibly grateful for those visits. Thank you, George, for putting in the energy and the effort to do that. It's not easy. Thanks for coming out and sharing a little bit of my life in my little log cabin, and for meeting my kiddo and my husband and spending time with us as a family. It has been wonderful to have honest and respectful conversations together about politics and cats and our family's history. We had a really great visit this last fall. We spent time playing with my 4-year-old and drinking lots of coffee, eating delicious meals together and connecting about the things that have divided our country as a whole and our family in particular. It was so nice to connect and reflect on the past and how that has shaped each of our family members and the relationships that we have all had. Tabby made me feel really comfortable. She was very kind. She made my husband feel comfortable and accepted as well, which was such a gift to us. I felt that like I could be my true and complete self around Tabby without any judgment, and that is a beautiful gift. I will miss her dearly. I know we all will. Thank you.
By my side, sit by my side, come as close as the air, sharing
The memory of gray. Sit by my side, come as close as the air, sharing a memory of gray,
and
wonder in my words and dream about the pictures that I play of changes.
green leaves of summer turn red in the fall, to brown and to yellow they fade, and then they have to die, trapped within the circle time parade of changes. Scenes of my young years turn warm in my mind, visions of shadows that shine, and one day I returned and found they were the victims of the vines of changes. The world spinning madly, it drifts in the dark, swings through a hollow of haze, a race around the stars, a journey through the universe ablaze of changes. Moments of magic will glow in the night. All fears of the forest are gone, but when the howling breaks, they're swept away by golden drops of dawn, of changes. Passions will part to a strange melody, as fires will sometimes burn cold, like petals in the wind. We're puppets of the silver strings of souls, of changes. Your tears will be trembling, now we're somewhere else. One last cup of wine we will pour. I'll kiss you one more time and leave you on the rolling river shores of changes.
Is this on? Yes, thank you. We've come to the time in our service when we invite all those who would like to come forward with a brief reflection, memory, or story about Tabby that you'd like to share here in the microphone. Or if you would prefer, just wave or lift your hand and I can bring the microphone to you. If you're joining us online on YouTube, please type your memories into the chat so that Tabby's family can read those stories later. I invite anyone to come forward, please.
Hi, my name is David Maxis. First of all, I want to say how wonderful it's been sitting here and learning so much more about Tabby than I ever knew. And it's great to have that picture. And okay, I'll get it started. Partly that's because frankly, I didn't know Tabby that well. So I don't have any real funny stories or things like that. But since I arrived at First Parish in 2005, I had occasion to interact with her in different times and hear her speak in different places. And I developed an appreciation that Tabby, along with George, was someone who held Unitarian Universalism very close to her heart, someone who put her faith into practice, into life, and someone who was a pillar of First Parish. This showed up in all the many First Parish-related stories we've heard this morning, and we've heard about her long-time devotion to Unitarian Universalism. Her service here as the director of RE, involvement in the sanctuary program has been mentioned, to her comments at congregational meetings, and I think George and Tabby were among the most loyal people at those meetings that are so critical to the church functioning well. So even though I didn't know Tabby well, she was and is an important part of my First Parish experience, my experience with Unitarian Universalism, and I'm thankful for those things.
I'm going to hold this because I really couldn't hear the last one. Can you hear me? Okay, good. I'm Meg. I'm Tabby's sister-in-law, George's sister. And I've known her for a long, long time. I think I was 13 when I met her. And we grew up together as well, in a way, although I moved away a lot quicker than George did, and further. And we raised our children similarly. I have wonderful pictures of you as tiny people, so take a look at that. I loved this. My pictures will add to the center part of your life when you were raising your kids. To me, Tabby was, yes, kind, generous, incredibly smart, creative, unusually creative, not just the standard, let's find some money and, have a good life. She looked out to other people and made a true effort, as all of you saw here, to make the world a better place. The thing that I will remember about her and about our generation and about is that the next generation is very important to us. She loved all of you. I look out and I see her face over and over again in the children and the grandchildren, and I hope the great-grandchildren, and the cousins, and the friends probably are looking like her right now, too. She does show up again and again in the faces. Please, if I take anything from this absolutely lovely service, is that we do need to care for each other. She was right. And this congregation was a blessing to her and should be a blessing to George and to his children and their children. She's gone, but not forgotten. And one other thing, she wasn't just always sweet and kind. This was not Tabby, come on. As my mother used to say, I'm not as interested in nice people, I'm interested in interesting people. She could be, the last time I had a really long conversation with her was after the first surgery. And she was hilariously funny about how angry she was at the hospital. They didn't do what they should have done, and she was going to tell me about it and tell me exactly what she told them. And I laughed through the whole thing because she was so her. She was finally getting better, and she was pissed. So she gave you the right to be pissed and to hold people accountable for their good deeds and their bad deeds. She was a good woman, and of a certain, not like our parents' generation, our generation, and not like your generation, our generation. We can all learn from each other. We love each other. Let's continue to watch out for each other. Okay. And I will miss you, Tabby. I was looking forward to being an old crabby lady with you.
Hi, I'm Tabby's youngest sister, Abigail. I had not intended to speak today because, frankly, I'm still processing. I find this death unfathomable. It came out of nowhere. I was only 5 years old when George entered my life as Tabby's partner. And so for most of my life, it's been Tabby and George. One name goes with the other, never apart, never singular, always Tabby and George. And so I know that as George is here and his children, Tabby stays with me, even as it's so unfathomable to imagine that she's not here in body, because we've all absorbed her, and George most of all. I cannot imagine that these two people could be cleaved in two. It's, like I said, just unfathomable. Thank you.
I'm Ethan, her son. I have struggled all my life with social situations. And what success I've had is largely due to her example. I've never known what to say in most occasions, but I've always known what to do. Bring food, bring comfort, bring cheer. And as a result, while only one of my multitude of far-flung friends across the world is here with me today, were I to gather up all of my friends whose lives she has touched, who remembered her to this day, we could easily fill this church thrice over.
Thank you all so much for sharing. With grief in our hearts at Tabby's loss, yet joy for all of the happy times we shared with her, we pause together for a moment of quiet when we can reflect, remember, and rejoice that Tabby was a part of our lives. We'll have a moment of silence. Please rise now in body or in spirit and join in singing another of Tabby's selected hymns, Abide With Me. The lyrics are in your orders of service and can be found at number 101 in the gray hymnals.
Thank you all so much again for gathering today in honor and remembrance of Tabby Rappolt. Again, Tabby's family invites all of you who are here in Needham to join them after the postlude for a memorial reception in our parish hall, which is just out the door to your left and down the hallway on the right. We hope you will stay to continue sharing memories of Tabby with one another. As we close our service today, take these words adapted from poet Nancy Wood with you as a benediction. Hold on to what is good, even if it is a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe, even if it is a tree which stands by itself. Hold on to what you must do, even if it is a long way from here, and hold on to her hand, even when she has gone away from you. Blessed be, and amen.
When the deer is bedded down, and the bear is gone to ground, and the northern goose has wandered off to warmer bay and sound, it's so easy in the cold to feel the darkness of the year, and the heart is growing lonely for the morning. Oh, my Joni, don't you know that the stars are swinging low, and the seas are rolling easy as they did so long ago? And if I had a thing to give you, I would tell you one more time that the world is always turning to the morning. When the darkness falls around you and the north wind come to blow, and you hear him call your name out as he walks the brittle snow, that old wind don't mean your trouble, he don't care or even know. He's a walking down the darkness toward the morning. Oh, my Joni, don't you know that the stars are swinging low, and the seas are rolling easy as they did so long ago? And if I had a thing to give you, I would tell you one more time that the world is always turning toward the morning. It's a pity we don't know what the little flowers know. They can't face the cold November, they can't take the wind and snow. They put their glories all behind them, bow their heads and let it go. But you know they'll be there shining in the morning. Oh, my Joni, don't you know that the stars are swinging low, and the seas are rolling easy as they did so long ago? And if I had a thing to give you, I would tell you one more time that the world is always turning toward the morning, that the world is always turning toward the morning.
All my bags are packed, I'm ready to go. I'm standing here outside your door. I hate to wake you up to say goodbye, but the dawn is breaking, it's early morn. Taxi's waiting, he's blowing his horn. Already I'm so lonesome I could cry. So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. I'm leaving on a jet plane. I don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go. There's so many times I've let you down. So many times I've played around. I tell you now, they don't mean a thing. Every place I go, I think of you. Every song I sing for you. When I come back, I'll wear your wedding ring. So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. I'm a-leaving on a jet plane. I don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go. Now the time has come to leave you. One more time, let me kiss you. Then close your eyes, I'll be on my way. Dream about the days to come when I won't have to leave alone. About the time I won't have to say. Kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. I'm leaving on a jet plane. I don't know when I'll be back again. Leaving on a jet plane. I don't know when I'll be back again. Leaving on a jet plane. I don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go.
When the deer is bedded down and the bear is gone to ground and the northern goose has wandered off to warm a bay in the south. It's so easy in the cold to feel the darkness of the year, and the heart is growing lonely for the morning. Oh, my Joni, don't you know that the stars are swinging slow and the seas are rolling easy as they did so long ago? If I had a thing to give you, I would tell you one more time that the world is always turning toward the morning. Now October's growing thin and November's coming home. You'll be thinking of the season and the sad things that you've seen, and you hear that old wind walking, hear him singing high and thin. You could swear he's out there singing of your sorrow. Oh, my Joni, don't you know that the stars are swinging slow and the seas are rolling easy as they did so long ago? And if I had a thing to give you, I would tell you one more time that the world is always turning toward the morning. When the darkness falls around you and the north wind comes to blow, and you hear him call your name out as he walks the brittle snow, that old wind don't mean you trouble. He don't care or even know. He's just walking down the darkness toward the morning. Oh, my Joni, don't you know that the stars are swinging slow and the sea tell you one more time that the world is always turning toward the morning. It's a pity we don't know, but the little flowers know they can't face the cold November, they can't take the wind and snow. They put their glories all behind them, bow their heads and let it go, but you know they'll be there shining in the morning. Oh, but Joni, don't you know that the stars are swinging slow, and the seas are rolling easy as they did so long ago. And if I had a thing to give you, I would tell you one more time that the world is always turning toward the morning. Oh, but Joni, don't you know that the days are rolling slow and the winters are walking easy as he did so long ago. And if that wind should come and ask you, why's my Joni weeping so, won't you tell him that you're weeping for the morning? Oh, my Joni, don't you know that the stars are swinging slow and the seas are rolling easy as they did so long ago? And if I had a thing to give you, I would tell you one more time that the world is always turning toward the morning. In that wee dark engine room, where the chill seeps through your soul, how we huddled round that wee pot stove that burned oily rags and coal. How the winter blizzards blow and the whaling fleet's at rest, tucked in Leith Harbour's sheltered bay, safely anchored 10 abreast. The whalers at their stations, as from shed to shed they go, carry little bags of coal with them and a little iron stove. In that wee dark engine room, where the chill seeps through your soul, how we huddled round that wee pot stove that burned oily rags and coal. The fireman Paddy worked with me on the engine stiff and cold. A stranger to the truth was he, there's not a lie he hasn't told. And he boasted of his gold mine and of all the hearts he'd won, and his bonny sense of humor shone just like a ray of sun. In that wee dark engine room, where the chill seeps through your soul, how we huddled round that wee pot stove that burned oily rags and coal. Then one day we saw the sun and the factory ships return,
Meet your old friends, sing a song, hope the season won't be long. Then homeward bound when it's over, we'll leave this icy hole. But I always will remember that little iron stove. In that wee dark engine room, where the chill seeps through your soul, how we huddled round that wee pot stove that burned oily rags and coal.
Black, black, black is the color of my true love's hair. His lips are like some rosy fair, the finest face and the neatest hands. I love the ground whereon he stands. I love my love, and well he knows. I love the grass whereon he goes. If he on earth no more I did see, my life will quickly fade away. I'll climb up the mountains for to mourn and weep, for satisfied I'll never sleep. I'll write to you in a few little lines. I'll suffer death 10,000 times. The winter is past and the leaves are green. The time is gone that we have seen, but still I long for the day to come when you and I will be as one.
life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails the new creation. Above the tumult and the strife, I hear its music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest loudly roars? I hear the truth, it liveth. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble sick with fear, and hear their death knell ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? In prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing? My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails the new creation. Above the two